Despite international outcry, a Saudi blogger's conviction has been upheld. Saudi Arabia's Supreme Court has upheld the sentence of 1,000 lashes and 10 years of imprisonment on blogger Raif Badawi. Now, he had been convicted originally back in 2012, I believe, of insulting Islam through electronic channels. Now, that is understandable considering that he set up and ran for 4 years the liberal Saudi network, which was designed to promote discussion about the religious establishment and authorities in Saudi Arabia. Now, that is almost necessarily going to involve an element of criticism, and he is now going to be suffering for it. He was originally fined 600 blows, 7 years of imprisonment. Prosecutors eventually revisited it, saying that was too lenient. I don't know to who. Vlad the Impaler was not impressed with that. He's also being fined 1 million rials, which is equivalent of about $250,000. So we have more details as well, but his conviction has been upheld. He will have the 10 years in prison. He will have the 1,000 lashes, of which they have already done 50, I believe, which we'll show you very shortly.
Yeah, we have tape of that. Okay, so I like how specific they are about how you're not allowed to insult the Prophet. Okay, in this case, you're not allowed to insult Islam through electronic channels.
Yes.
By mail, debatable. I mean, you're going to send in a letter to insult. Well, you've gone through a lot of effort there. You know, we might allow that, right? Or perhaps that's Section 4C, not by mail, not by email, not by smoke signal. Nope. Right. So, look, we've been through this before. It is a tremendous admission of weakness when you don't allow the other side to speak.
Yeah.
That's basically saying, my argument cannot withstand reason. So what I'm going to do is shut you up by putting you in prison and by whipping you and doing all these things. It also says, I don't really believe in my God. Because if I believed in my God, I believe that you will be burned alive for eternity.
For all time.
Now think about that. Can you imagine being burned alive for 10 minutes?
A second.
An hour. A year. 10 years. 1,000 years.
Yeah.
What is your little lashing going to do? What is your jail sentence going to do that Allah cannot do? When you say that you need to do this, you're saying, I don't really believe there is a hell. And if there's no hell, I don't think the Quran is literal.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's a God. I don't think he's ever going to get punished, right? I got to do God's work for him because my God is tiny.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. You're saying that when you do this to this guy.
And they're also saying we are terrified that, man, all this stuff we have in our religion, it's pretty much bullshit. It's very easy to convince someone that it's bullshit. So if they come across your blog post, they'll leave as a reasonable person. They will leave the religion. So we got to shut it down, or nobody will continue to believe this in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and Christians have done this throughout history as well, but in this case, in Saudi Arabia, this is the law of the land, right? They are among the most guilty of any government on the planet right now, of saying we cannot, our way of thinking cannot withstand any scrutiny, right? I must shut it all down, otherwise it will crumble. If I were to go into the free marketplace of ideas, I would get hosed. I would get destroyed. I would get lashed. Yeah. Right? So I must shut down the marketplace. Yeah. Now, I want to talk about what kind of a hero this guy is in a second, but we want to show you the video. Now, the video, we were worried. We were worried that honestly, you thought the same thing I did independently. I was worried it was going to be Roots-like they were going to get out a huge whip and stuff. It is not that. So you don't have to earmuff the kids. Of course, it's bad, but let's watch and then we'll discuss it. Oh, thank God we punished that guy. That'll show him to insult Islam through the electronic channels, through a series of tubes. Okay. It takes courage, by the way, to tape that, too. Saudi Arabia is one of the most interconnected country in the world. Okay, not number one necessarily, but among. South Korea is the most connected, but Saudi Arabia is among the most. So I like that the guy had the courage to tape that so the rest of the world can see it, and it caused some outrage and could have actually spared him the rest of his punishment. It turns out it won't be.
Yeah.
I was relieved to find out that it was not a bullwhip, that it could have been much worse, right?
I mean, for all we know, that could have still been rough. I mean, it looked like from his reaction, he wasn't screaming. He walked away at the end. It wasn't like Singapore, what I've seen. I imagine it's not fun.
Yeah, that could, I mean, he could have bruising. I have no idea how bad it is, but it looked like a light spanking.
Yeah.
Let's just, I mean, you know.
Let's say it didn't hurt at all. Still, 10 years in a Saudi Arabian prison and a $250,000 fine for a blogger, that's probably harsh enough.
Yeah. Okay, now here comes the people, Islam apologists.
No, I was just going to say
called it a light spanking.
We just got done basically saying that the religion is inherently bullshit and lies, and everyone would leave it if they were exposed to any information about it. It would just be shut down. Islam apologists. Islam apologists.
Okay, so I'm glad to see though that at least like I feel like I've seen harder spankings at Grey's Anatomy. I think that there are some guys in this country who might sign up for that. You know, might enjoy that.
There's some dungeons I can show you.
But putting the kidding aside about the actual video itself, one, we don't know how hurt he is.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
And no one wants to spend a day in a Saudi prison, let alone 10 years. So now let's go to the real issue at hand, which is the bravery of Raif Badawi. Okay, it's not like he's unaware that he's in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
It's not like he's unaware of their laws and how strident they are and the consequences that could attach to it. And to run a website called the Liberal Saudi Network and to do an online debate on religious and political issues. The courage required to do that, and I don't know that he knows what the lashings are. I would have imagined to get, like I said, a bullwhip, right? I mean, there is no end to how barbarous the Saudi government can be.
They behead people.
That's right.
This year.
Like, you know, this is one of our top allies. Now, they behead people just like ISIS does. But that's okay. They give us their oil at reasonable prices. So we look past all the lashings and the beheadings that Saudi Arabia does. And we're for freedom. We did, with Saudi Arabia, we did Operation All the Freedoms we did in Iraq. Right?
All the freedoms.
Yeah, right? So, no, Saudi Arabia's not interested in freedom.
Yeah.
This is what Saudi Arabia is interested in. And Badawi has the courage of a lion. I don't know that I would have done it. I don't know any of you would have done it. You run a website criticizing Islam inside Saudi Arabia? That is unbelievable courage.
Yeah. And it's a sad day because earlier on the show we gave them 1 point for allowing women to travel without permission. I'm going to have to take that point back.
Yeah. And so, look, I got people who then, you know, respond to me online through electronic channels. In the reverse, you're unfair to Saudi Arabia. You don't know enough about Saudi Arabia, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay. Are you kidding me, man? Like, I can't be unfair enough to Saudi Arabia. Well, look at what they do to their own people. I'm not the one being unfair.
Criticize them.
Yeah, they're the ones being unfair. What part, like, how do you support this government? How do you support this government?
By the way, has it ever been a good sign about a country when your legal punishments are administered as public entertainment? I don't think that's ever led to anything good.
One last thing. Imagine if a person did it instead of a country. So I run the TYT network, okay? Not a big deal. Perhaps actually not a big deal. Okay. Imagine somebody on the show said something I didn't like, right? And I'm like, Giant, line up against the wall. Okay. No, if I really I put you in a cave for 10 years or I start whipping you, whatever, people with, you guys got to get arrested. I mean, they got fucking maniac.
Yeah.
Maniac, right?
Especially when they see your name. Yeah. Jail in Guantanamo.
Right. But a country does it, and they're one of our top allies in the world.
And you can't even criticize them. Here, we can't even criticize them, or we get criticized.
By the way, I can't help it. I'm going to say one last thing about Saudi Arabia, because they get under my skin in every way imaginable. A really interesting story out recently. I don't want to get too big into it because it's a giant story, but about how the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency in this country, knew that we were creating an extremist Sunni group in Syria, which wound up becoming ISIS. and they called it a Salafist principality. Okay, they knew that it would capture territory. They thought it might capture Mosul and Ramadi, which it did.
Yeah.
Okay, and the people who helped set that up and really, really wanted to set that up, Saudi Arabia, because they're Sunni and they wanted to fight against the Shiite control of Syria, and they were worried that Syria and Iran could. By the way, Saudis and Israelis, super good friends. The Israelis, because of the power of Hezbollah back in 2006, also hate the Shia and didn't want a Shia bridge from Lebanon all the way to Iran. So they also wanted to destabilize the region and set up a Sunni country in the middle of that bridge.
Yeah.
So they were all working to create Sunni extremists in the area. Mission accomplished.
Oops. I don't think Saudi Arabia wants that anymore.
Yeah. Now,
Not its current form.
that's right. Now ISIS is inside Saudi Arabia doing bombings fairly regularly and destabilizing the government. Watch out what you wish for. You just might get it.
Yeah.